And we're live.
Hi, everyone. This is Carrie Johnson with Department of Management. I also have Ted Nelson here on this presentation with me. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to take a little bit of time at the beginning of this presentation just to remind folks, since I have a lot of county auditors on the line, just to remind you of a few items in regards to the county budget, just based on, questions that I've been getting lately. Since I have this audience, might as well address a couple things, just a few reminders, that sort of thing, few uh, items of explanation. And then we'll dive into the discussion of the actual budget statement, what it looks like, what's being mailed, what data is being populated, and how does it get populated, that sort of thing. So, and then we'll end with questions if we have plenty of time. I do have Ted on the line as well, and what he's going to do is kind of monitor the chat and interrupt me if there's some pertinent questions that would be helpful just to kind of address at that time. Otherwise, we'll address questions at the end or any reminders, things that you guys are all dealing with. And then Ted, of course, can chime in with whatever he feels is pertinent to the presentation. And I do know it is being recorded. So if you have someone that wasn't able to attend, then I believe ISAC will make that recording available to everyone. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead with my presentation. I will provide these slides to Katie at ISAC, so that way she can, send it out as well or post it along with the presentation. So thought we'd start out with, of course, this presentation today is going to be talking about the new property tax bill. And I thought we'd start out with a few reminders. Okay, so and this is just remembering our time frame, right? So we've recommended that by March 5th, cities, counties, and schools go into the Department of Management system and enter the proposed tax notice hearing page information, right? So what would be required there to be entered, we'll go into in a little bit more detail, but a lot of that page is populated, but there are certain items that cities, counties, and schools need to make sure they have entered into the system. We are recommending March 5th because we don't want people to wait till the last absolute minute to do this. That doesn't help anyone, right? But technically, statutorily, this has to be done by March 15th. And again, this information is used for two things. It's used for your hearing notice that you're going to publish in the paper, just like normal, but it's also used for that budget statement that's mailed by the county auditor to all your taxpayers. So then going along with that, March 20th is the statutory date for county auditors to mail that proposed property tax notice to taxpayers in their county. So those two things coming right up, obviously. And then again, this notice is about one of two public hearings that you have and cities have and schools have on the budget. So this first one is about the proposed property tax levy. This hearing replaces that old max levy that you used to do. We're doing this instead. And please, just keep in mind when folks are getting this mailing, and don't hold your hearing any earlier than March 25th. And the reason being, we want folks to actually receive the statement in the mail to get that additional notice that, hey, there's a hearing coming up on this proposed property tax. If, just think about it sort of from a logical standpoint, if someone held their hearing on, March 10th, then, you know, 2 weeks later got a notice, got a budget statement in the mail saying, well, a hearing was held on March 10th. That does them no good. So it's really about, letting this information play out and get to folks. The notice, of course, is same as always, not less than 10, no more than 20 days prior to the date of the hearing. Now, I will say too, especially this first year, you might have some little tiny cities that kind of miss the boat on this, right? And so just kind of keep that in mind with certification, that it's not a legal requirement in the bill to hold it later than March 25th, but it's what we've communicated. It's the logical way to do it. And again, when we talk about certification stuff next week, we'll talk a little bit more about things to look for as you county auditors and staff are certifying budgets. And then, of course, the ultimate deadline that we need to address is April 30th. Cities, counties, and schools, of course, have to have that second public hearing on the full budget. This is largely unchanged, right? It's same as always. Public hearing on the full budget, published or posted not less than 10, not less than 10, no more than 20 days prior to the date of that hearing. So that's remained largely the same other than the April 30th deadline. And of course, too, when you adopt that full budget, you can't exceed the amount of property tax dollars you published in that initial proposed property tax notice. Okay, and as far as counties goes, you, on the top of your property tax tab in the budget, your general basic, maximum levy and rate has been calculated, and your rural basic maximum levy and rate has been calculated. So just keep in mind, in your budget, you cannot exceed those individual rates. Everybody's is different. But the one that's on the top of your property tax tab is what is applicable to your particular county. And then going along with that, there is, a lot of confusion with this as well. And I think we're all kind of getting to the point where we understand how this affects the supplemental rates, but keep in mind that you can only use those supplemental rates, so general supplemental or rural supplemental, if you are at your county's statutory maximum. And if you're looking to reduce your tax asking, you just as you always would, you would reduce it from your general supplemental first if you happen to be using it. And then again, keep in mind, folks, if there are any questions about your individual budget, just send me an email, give me a call and we'll talk through it. Okay, so the other thing that I'm getting questions about that I want to take just a couple minutes on is the notice itself and the example that's listed on the bottom of the notice. Because you guys can't see the math behind it, there's lots of folks saying, okay, what is the notice actually talking about down here when it's calculating and showing a percent change of, an individual property with current year versus proposed? Like, what does this actually mean? Okay, in the statute, it was very specifically laid out what this example should be. And it is a $100,000 property, assessed property. And we're looking at it in the current year and in the budget year. And we're looking at a residential example and a commercial example. Well, keep in mind that commercial, and you guys know this, the first $150,000 of value in a commercial property is treated with the residential rollback. So that's why when you look at these two examples, one says residential, one says commercial, but they're the exact same numbers, right? Because they're both $100,000 property, and because commercial is treated like residential for the first 150, it's going to get the same rollback. So on this next slide, I just kind of show you what the math is behind it in that particular example. So we got our $100,000 property, we multiply it by the rollback in the current year, which was about 54. And then we see our example here play out, whereas this individual, so again, commercial and residential would pay the same in this particular example. This is the countywide rate, so it was 382, and this is a rural residence rate for 598. So multiplying that by the countywide rate or the rural rate to show that first example there. Okay, so that's our current year. In the budget year, we know that the residential rollback really went down, right? So it's a little bit over 46%. So we take our $100,000 property, multiply it by the residential rollback, which has really went down, and then we take that times our proposed rate for countywide and our proposed rate for rural resident. So that's our numbers right here. Okay. And then in the last column, the percent change, we're just showing, if we were, doing this, taking a look at the calculation of what that change actually means percentage wise. Obviously it's went down, so it's a negative, and it's showing that the tax would go down 16%. So because that assessed value stayed at $100,000 for both years, so didn't grow, which in in real life it probably would have grown. So the value stayed the same, but the residential rollback went way down, so less of it is taxable, less amount is taxable in the budget year than it is in the current year. Folks, you're going to see a lot of negatives in that final column, and it just is what it is. It's just a product of the example and the fact that residential rollback took a significant drop, which was, unusual. So it's just sort of a product of the example, but I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to understand the math behind it and then also explain it, if they're asked by a citizen, or explain it to their board. Again, so switching to our mailing information, again, no more max levy for cities and counties. Cities, counties, and schools have to hold this additional hearing, and this is new for schools, guys. So new process for the schools. They've never had to have 2 hearings like they are having now, so this is something new for them. But cities, counties, and schools have to hold this extra hearing, and into the DOM system, they have to submit the time, date, and place of the hearing, their proposed budget year tax rate in dollars, and if there's an increase, an explanation for the reasons of the increase. So you do that entry primarily by entering your tax asking in the property tax tab. So specific to you guys in the counties that are doing the budget, property tax tab gets populated with your tax asking, and our system, the hearing notice page, is going to pull that right over. And then on the hearing notice page, there's a box at the bottom where you're going to explain your reasons for increase or indicate that there was no increase if that's the case. And when we talk about increase, we are talking about tax dollar increase. Don't focus on levy rate, because that isn't really what we're talking about here. We're saying, are you asking for more dollars than you received in the current year? And then your notice page and the mailing is going to be populated with some information that we are providing through our system. So we obviously at DOM have your current year tax rate in dollars. So that's populated into the form. We also are doing the math, you could see on the calculation of the tax impact on that residential and commercial example. So that's already populated in there for you. And then as part of the mailing itself, there's going to be a percentage of current year property tax rate in comparison to other levy authorities. So it's just sort of, okay, how is tax distributed between the levy authorities in this particular area? And I'll talk about that a little bit more with this statement. So few things are provided by the city, county, or school by entering information into our system. And then a few things are populated by Department of Management. Again, notice has to be published in the same manner as your regular budget notice. So for counties, all of your official newspapers, and it does have to be placed on your local government website and social media if applicable. So for cities and counties, this is one sort of holdover similarity to max levy, right? Because you had to put those out there on your website or your social media accounts if you have official ones. So that is a requirement that's the same. Now, this is, again, only a requirement for this additional hearing. It doesn't No changes were made with your regular budget notice. Obviously, it makes a lot of sense to put that on your website. Everyone could agree with that, but it's not a change or requirement that was added for your regular budget notice. Okay, so a couple other things about this hearing. The public hearing is separate from any other meeting, and no other business shall be conducted at the hearing. So just sort of keep that in mind. The hearing should be its own agenda, own meeting, open the meeting, open your hearing, take your comments from the public and input, close the hearing, adjourn the meeting. And if you're wanting to, go ahead and schedule your budget hearing notice, your budget hearing date, excuse me, for the regular budget hearing, you can do that, but you do need to have it at a separate meeting, whether that's a little bit later that day or the next day, what have you. It should be at a separate meeting. After you hold this hearing, there is no action required. Unlike the max levy, which specifically required you to pass a resolution, their statute didn't address any particular action that is required. But once you do adopt your final budget, keep in mind that you can decrease from whatever you asked in that initial, whatever you proposed in your initial hearing notice, but you can't increase once you adopt that final budget. And that, of course, is sort of similar to the max levy in that way, but there's no resolution coming into play. Okay, so this is just, again, sort of another view of your hearing notice for a county. You can see white cells mean it's either populated for you or it's coming over from another page. So your proposed column, your tax asking, and then it's calculating the rates, obviously. That's coming from your property tax page. And then at the bottom, of course, is where you would put in your tax increase explanation if it's applicable. So at this point, I hope lots of folks have been in there looking at their forms. I do know when I looked today that there were a handful of counties that the budget forms are still in new status. So not to stress you out, but counties are also required to get this information into the online system, no later than March 15th. So make sure that you know what you're supposed to be getting in there and that you're, understanding the process and getting that information into the system. So again, cities, counties, and schools, first hearing information entered into the system, our instruction, so DOM instruction to cities, counties, and schools will be that information needs to be entered by March 15th at 4 p.m. to be included at the mailing. Unfortunately this year, March 15th happens to be on a Friday, and that just stinks. But it is what it is, and we don't want, this to kind of bleed over into the weekend any more than it already probably is going to. Sorry about that, guys. But we are saying March 15th at 4, and we will communicate that to cities, counties, and schools. There's really no reason why it would need to be any later than that. So, essentially they need their proposed property tax information and the time, date, place of their hearing in the system. That's what needs to be in there. And of course, March 20th, you mail out the statements. Okay, so let's talk about exactly what this document looks like, right? So we, DOM, so Ted and I, and we roped John in sometimes to met with a group of very, very helpful folks from you all's ranks. So county auditors, county auditor staff, we had some assessors in there to talk about House Law 718. And there was a lot of discussion and a lot of work on this budget statement. So kudos to all the folks that helped with this process. It was a lot of work. We drug you into Des Moines, into the Capitol building, and we do appreciate it. And, we're all doing our best this year. It'll be probably an interesting year, but if there are tweaks moving forward, we can address those and kind of learn from the process. But we created the form that's going to be mailed, and it has been provided to software providers as well as the mailing companies that requested it. It is a one-page document that's two-sided. And that is what your taxpayers will receive. When we provided it out to our software folks and the mailing company folks, we have sort of mapped, this is where this piece of data goes, this is where that piece of data goes. And so, again, we're trying to provide everything that's needed for the mailing itself. There's not a lot of data input that is coming from the county other than to make the connection between the tax district information and the individual on the parcel that's going to get the property tax statement. So I'm going to go through just sort of the segments of the notice itself so you can kind of see for sure what it looks like if you haven't gotten a good look at it. This is sort of the top third of the notice, and it's just indicating to the taxpayer what this is. We are going to be providing this again by our state taxing district code. That will be, your software will connect that to your taxing district code and the parcel, of course, that ultimately will receive the notice. And the tax district that's going to be listed here is going to be your tax district number and name. We know that lots of folks don't use, our state 6-digit code, whatever. So, that will be what's listed as what you call this tax district. And then, of course, it's set up to be a windowed envelope. So this is where your name address would be populated. And it's, again, here just sort of an explanation because folks aren't going to understand what they're getting. And we know that, but if they take a moment to read through it, hopefully they'll get a basic understanding of what the statement is about. And again, big picture, guys, this is really about telling people, hey, there's upcoming public hearings that your city, your county, and your school are having on their proposed budget and tax rates. Here's, what they're proposing, and this is when those hearings are. So this is, big picture. This is what we're telling people. This is another opportunity to, directly reach the taxpayers and request their input on the taxes that impact them. So, this is that's sort of your top piece of it. In the middle, on the first side, you're going to have, you start out with the school, public hearing information, time, date, place, website, current property tax, current rate, the effective rate, proposed property tax, and proposed rate. Now, just a quick explanation on the effective rate. And again, there's an explanation here if you have property taxpayers that don't quite get it, but they might, also ask. The effective tax rate is just simply saying, okay, what would happen to the rate in the budget year if we asked for the exact same dollars in the budget year that we're asking for now in the current year, but we applied that to the budget year value. So valuation goes up, tax dollars remain the same. In most cases, we're going to see tax rate go down. So that's, it's just for purposes of comparison is what the effective tax rate is. So again, all this information just comes directly from the public notice for the school. So you'll have one that looks like this, and then a city one that looks just like this, and then a county one that looks just like this. Now, the city will list a line for, regular city rate and ag rate. The county one will list a rate, a line for countywide and rural. So just sort of FYI there. So that's really the only difference. But again, it's all pulling from those notice pages. And then if someone flipped over their notice and looked on the back, the tax district would be listed on the top, and then they'd see this table. And this table shows how the current year taxes within the levy authorities that are in this taxing district what, how is that distributed? Is the school 40% of it and the county 20% and the city 10, or like what is that mix? And that's essentially what this is. If you think back to your tax statement, you might recall that there is that sort of comparison on your tax statement about how tax is distributed in that particular area by those levy authorities. And this is a similar approach, right? So it's saying, okay, you're in this city county school overall, this is how the breakdown of the taxes happen within that area. And we do have it listed non-TIF versus TIF. So it is going to be reporting those diverted TIF revenues as well under the TIF property tax column if they are an entity, a county, or a city that use TIF. And again, all populated for you from our current year data. And then on the bottom of that second page, or the opposite page, back, I should say, page, this is just, again, those examples that are shown on the notice, same information. At the very bottom of the flipped over side, you'll see a couple notes that we just wanted to make sure that the reader could take into account as they were looking at the information. One, of course, final tax rates will change due to the final adopted amounts, legislative changes, other authorities that are part of the mix. We're not talking about the ag extension or the assessor rates here. We're just talking about city county school. So folks need to remember that there are others that are levying taxes. And then in particular, schools tax rates might change due to legislative action and things that are happening in that regard. If you have any SMIDs in your county, and if you do, you know it. And this is just a note that the proposed property tax levies do not include the SMIDs. The example, so if, keep in mind, you might get somebody that gets this notice that's in a city ag district, right? Well, city ag districts they're not paying the full city rate, but the example that is listed is going to be for the full city rate. Rural taxing districts, goes without saying, the city information will just be blank. They're just going to be seeing the school and the county information, and there'll be no information for a city if they're in a rural district. And then for Polk County, we do indicate, because Polk County levies for fire and EMS for their townships. It's part of the county budget when they adopt it. So it's just sort of a note for Polk County that those rates aren't included. Now, one of the things that we decided to do at DOM was to provide on our website, on this link, information regarding this notice. So if a property taxpayer gets this and they're super confused, hopefully they'll see this website and they'll be like, okay, you go to the website, and they'll just get a little bit broader explanation, kind of how I walked through it, just sort of, trying to help them understand, what is this notice? What's its purpose? Obviously, we can't speak to any of the increases or the rates within, but we can tell them, okay, well, what does this table actually, what's it trying to communicate? So we're hoping that by providing the website here and, providing some background information on the document, that will answer some folks' questions. Okay, so that's what the document is itself that property taxpayers are going to get, right? One page, two-sided. So the data for the mailing, as we talked about, it's all coming from the Department of Management system. Some of it is from the hearing notices, and some of it is fields that we have calculated. So on March 15th, when you're ready to pull down this document, this data, you would log into the Department of Management system. Real simple, on the left-hand side, it's going to be called out as an option for you if you're logged in under the county auditor role. So log in, you'll see county auditor property tax mailing. So you don't have to scroll around for it. It's right there. Pretty easy, your county, and you do a run report. So it'll probably feel a little bit similar. It's going to spit out a CSV file where, if you do reports from our system, like any of the taxable value reports or any of those reports, you always have a CSV option. It's going to look like Excel, that's essentially, but it's going to generate for you a CSV file. You're going to want to download it. This is similar to how you have to do other reports from our system. You go and you download the report. And then in your downloads, if you wanted to look at it, you can see this is the data. And this might not be kind of what you want to see as far as, all the details, but every single row is a tax district, state tax district. So for each and every single row, it's going to have the applicable city, county, and school information, just listed as a big string of information. So you can see, we start with the school information, it's got the school meeting date, the school meeting time, et cetera, et cetera. And you might notice, so these guys here happen to be blank. So what does that mean? So this means, it's March 15th at 4:01, you've downloaded this file. These folks didn't have their notice page complete, right? Not proposed. So it's going to have no data. And in the explanation field, this is the data that would populate. So it says local government failed their legal duty to submit hearing information in time to be included in this mailing. So for example, if a school didn't get their information entered in time, everything would be blank. And then right here in this field where you would expect to see an explanation of tax increase, it would list this line here. Local government failed their legal duty to submit hearing information in time to be included in this mailing. So that's what's going to happen if somebody doesn't get their data in on time. There's not any other action that you need to take. It's just the system is going to check to see if that city, county, and school has proposed their property tax notice. If they haven't, then it's going to list this and there's going to be no data. Again, if you get the question regarding, well, what happened here, just direct them to that, city or school, because that's really, this information has been communicated a number of times through our instructions and presentations. So this is, not something that you need to answer for, but you can direct them to the applicable city or school. And please, as a county, don't fail this because you are also held to the same standard. You've got to get your information in there by March 15th at 4:00. Okay, again, you've got two pieces here. You've got the document and you've got this data file. Our data file that you download is by Department of Management tax district number. Your software is going to have you import this data file into your system, because obviously your software, your county software, has parcels by your tax district number, whatever you use for your county tax district number, as well as by the DOM tax district number. So that's the conduit, that's the connection here for the data. And then the county software will merge the downloaded CSV file with the budget statement template. So then these documents, of course, will be populated with this information. You might see how this data file, for example, has like A1, A2, A3, if we mapped that to these fields within the template. So that's very much behind the scenes information, but just to kind of give you an understanding of how it will actually connect at the end of the day. And we've been working with the software vendors on this for a few months, and they've received test files from us. And, I know they're getting that all ready to go when the data is downloaded. A couple things. Obviously, we're getting close to this actually happening. So, one thing, as county auditors, I know, and staff, I know you guys do this, but it is helpful, especially with your little cities, to just maybe touch base with them if you see that, nothing's going on. Maybe reach out to them and be like, hey, do you know that this is approaching and you have to do this extra hearing? Certainly the information's been provided for them, but we all know with staff turnover and all those numerous things, sometimes things get missed. So if you're able to reach out to some of your small cities, we think that's helpful. Of course, be ready to assist with questions regarding this mailing, to the extent that you can. You're gonna, you might get asked the questions. Again, if they're looking for a general, like, what is this document? Certainly direct them to that website that's on the back of the statement for just like a, hey, what is what is this information? But if they're saying, well, what's going on with the school rate or what have you, then they should be contacting the school. One important note here is that the statute specifically said that failure of a taxpayer to receive the mailing does not invalidate the process. Like, we know, and you guys know, we all know that there's going to be some people that don't get the notice that should have gotten it, whether somebody in their house tosses it, they think it's junk mail, it gets lost in the mail, dropped in a snowdrift, what have you, right? There's going to be people that don't end up getting this notice that should have gotten it. But that does not invalidate the process. So someone cannot say, I didn't get this, you can't pass your budget because I didn't get this mailing. That's not how it works. It's not how the world works, as we all know. So just kind of keep that in mind as well, that there is that sort of fail safe at the end of the day. So at this point, I think we'll just turn over to any questions. And Ted, do you see some in the Q&A that you think would be helpful to address?
Yeah, Carrie, there's 3 in there right now if you want to pull yours open that we can address. I've addressed the rest of them
Okay.
by text. So the first one is, can we review the data file on the 17th to look for any blank spaces and then pull it again after that? The answer is you can pull the download file as many times as you want. It's just going to be tricky to track them. So if you pull it once for checking, make sure you delete it out of your system before you pull it again. Otherwise, stack up different versions at different timelines, and then you could potentially send the wrong one for processing through your system. So you want to make sure that you keep that very well segmented if you're going to be pulling the file multiple times. We are currently working with the software providers, all of the software providers for your county software, and getting this file perfect for their use. So it should be as simple as you pull it, you pump it into your system, and it generates your output. We're trying to work that out right now. I think we're in a very good place. We plan on releasing the download functionality March 6th, I believe, right, Carrie?
Yep.
March 6th into your system, so you can take a look at it. If you want to look at the download file, feel free. Just make sure that you know which download file is the correct download file when you're going to do your mailing, because it will come out looking the same every time. And there's a lot of lines in these download files. So it can be very hard to tell one from the other if you've got multiple copies.
I think that's a really good caveat to mention. It would be very easy to mistakenly upload the wrong one and go with the wrong one that didn't have everyone's data. You can look at it. It doesn't hurt to look at it. If you are in a situation where you're like, well, everybody's in proposed tax notice, everyone's proposed it. Well, technically they do have until March 15th. So you got to be real careful about just assuming people are done with data entry. They could still return it to draft and make a change to their tax asking, or, hey, they find out that something happened with their notice of publication and they got to change their hearing date. Like, you do not want to be in a situation where you are sending a mailing with incorrect information. So again, we're going to tell people, users, meaning cities and schools, that if it's not in there by the 4th, by 4 p.m. on the 15th, then you're out of luck. Does a taxpayer who owns property in multiple tax districts within a county have to receive multiple mailings when the information is repetitive between the districts? So it kind of depends on what you mean by repetitive. If it's the same exact city, county, and school, they'd only need to get that once, right? But if you had someone in multiple tax districts, so they're, in one school district, but then they're also in a tax district with a different school district, they should get 2 different notices. But yeah, if you have a property owner that has, 10 parcels, but it's all in the same, city, county, school tax district, they wouldn't need to get 10 pieces of the exact same information.
Well, and it also would be allowable for them to get multiple pieces in one mailing. So you can
Right,
put multiple statements into one envelope,
right.
essentially. So if they are in different ones, you could, and they have the same mailing address, you could bundle those all together and mail them together.
Right. And that's sort of like those sort of end of the road, processes are kind of out of our control as far as DOM goes. So you have to kind of see what the capabilities are for your vendors. Like what can they do to cull the information? Everybody was kind of working, with a real short time frame here, so you got to keep that in mind as well. But if there's an opportunity to cull information and to eliminate duplicates and that sort of thing, we certainly would not stand in the way of that as far as DOM goes. But it's all about capability too. Like, I don't know, nobody's had a lot of time to work on this. So you got to kind of see what's possible. So any other questions? How do we handle the tax exempt properties? I know one of the vendors talked about trying to see if they could, you know, kind of pull those tax exempt properties, kind of remove them from the mailing. It's going to depend on, like, I'm not sure how those are flagged within your system, if it's even something that your vendor can kind of pull them out and, avoid those getting a notice. I certainly wouldn't think that they would need to get a notice. They're not a taxpayer, so that's kind of the way to look at it. But it's all about capabilities. Is there an opportunity? Is there time? Is there the ability to kind of pull those out? And so that's going to, depend on who you're working with.
So Carrie, the next one, will you be sending out instructions on how to pull the file? Yes, we will be providing instructions on how to do the download functionality, but I have my test system open. Carrie, do you want me to share it quick and go through a
Oh,
quick
sure. Yeah.
walkthrough as to how
Yeah.
to do that? So
Yep. It's very straightforward.
unshare your screen quick,
Okay.
and I will share mine. And we'll just walk through really quick.
Oops, sorry. There you go.
This is a super easy process for doing the download itself. So I'm in our test system. Yours will look very similar to this. You won't have any of this stuff in the middle here. I'm an administrator, so I get to see a lot of that stuff. But over here, under the valuation sub menu on the left-hand side, we've added in county auditor property tax mailing right here. And I'm gonna pop this up so that's a little easier for everybody to see. So right here, county auditor property tax mailing will be an option after March 6th. So all you have to do is come in, and like I was saying, so you can check the budget status in your own system by just going to status at the top and typing in, if you type in tax, and that's all you need to type in, it'll show you everyone who's in tax notice status. Okay, so tax notice, that's the minimum status they have to be in order to be part of the download file. So you check to see, are they in tax notice proposed status? And then also you can check for those who are in proposed status. So if you type in proposed, you should get tax notice proposed and anyone who's gone past that into proposed status, because tax notice proposed status is when they've done the first hearing notice for their property tax hearing in the system. Proposed status means they've gone on and also done their budget adoption notice proposal in our system. So they've gone further than they need to. So if they're in either of these two statuses or even adopted, hopefully no one has gone that far because they should not go that far. They shouldn't even be in proposed status at this point, but you're going to have some cities that go past and into proposed status, and some schools that might go past into proposed status, but they need to be at least in tax notice proposed status. So you can find that by going to your budgets section under local budgets for your control county entities. If they're outside of your control county, you come down to budget search, and then you can search them individually, or you can again just put in for status proposed, and it will show you all of those who have proposed in the system and have moved on. So I would still strongly suggest wait until March 15th at 4 p.m. because legally they have the right to change their data all the way up through that endpoint. So there's really no reason to do it ahead of that. Checking it is one thing, but actually doing the mailing, I would strongly suggest that you stick to it at that point. Okay, so once everybody's in and we're ready to go, it's March 15th, 4:01 p.m. I can come over here and click County Auditor Property Tax Mailing. Now, you should only have your county listed. I will show every county. So let's just pull Adair County. Sorry, Adair, you're always the example because you're first. So I'm going to pull their report. So I just select my county. I click Run Report. It'll take a minute or two because, like I said, there's a lot pulling together in this, and there is a lot in this file. So once it generates, you'll get these messages saying it's generating for download, still going, and then it'll say one that's reports generated successfully, and then you have to click on the download word in order to get the file to download. So once the file downloads, it'll be in your download folder as a CSV. We can pull it up in Excel, and there it is. So everybody who has submitted has data in there. Let me widen some of these columns quick. So you can see, like in this example, in our test system, we have Nottoway Valley School. They have a hearing date in here, and they have time, date, and place. So all of their information is in here because that means that they have made it into the tax notice proposed status. So their information flows through. But right on top of them, Orient Maxburg has not. They're not in tax notice proposed status, at least. So their information is not coming through. And then we have this statement in the explanation box that states the local government has failed to do their duty and have this information into the system by March 15th. That will go out on the notice along with a bunch of blank space where their rates would be and where their meeting time, date, and place would be. So schools come first, then counties in a line. Up Adair County, get it together. I know it's just our test system, but that you'll see them. And then you'll see after that, cities will start to populate in. Okay, and then all the way at the end of the test file, after cities, is the breakout. Is the examples first. The examples that Carrie went over of $100,000 assessed value property. What would their taxes be? What are their taxes this year? What will they be next year? What's the difference in percent? After that comes the breakout of the taxes paid for FY24 in terms of percentage to each type of levy authority. Those are at the authority level. We do not figure it by tax district. Every single city tax district will have the same city numbers in it, the same county numbers in it, the same school numbers in it for the amount of the city that's in that particular school district. We figured those totals at the entity level, not at the tax district level. So those are going to be the same across a lot of your tax districts. Don't get thrown by that. That's intentional. But that's the download file, and then your software system, whether your Solutions, Tyler, DevNet, or other, will pick up this file and load it into your software, is my understanding of how they're going to handle that. So that's the basics of how you run the system. Not a lot to it. It's going to be very, very simple. It's just a matter of it took us so long to get the data where it needed to be, was really what took so long to put this together. So let's see, will questions and answers be included in the recording we receive? Yes, all of this is being recorded in. Yep, okay, got that. Is all homestead credit not be reimbursed by the state or just the addition for those who are signed over 65 option? So it's
Oh,
the homestead exemption is not reimbursed, right? There's two different things now. There's the homestead credit, which everybody can get if they own a home, regardless of age. And then there's the homestead exemption, which is if you're over 65, you can also have part of your property value taken off the rolls for taxation purposes, and that part does not get reimbursed to you. Okay, that is an exemption of property value, not a credit. Did you communicate to vendors regarding the ability to group by like authorities and not necessarily tax district? For example, if I have one parcel in a TIF and another not in a TIF, but they're both paying the same authorities, TIF will not play into this at all. We give base districts to your software and they're running everything off of the parent district. So if they're in a TIF or out of a TIF, like the same rate's going to apply because they pay the same rate. So we go by what is the rate paid, not what is reserved for TIF and what is not reserved for TIF. So that kind of in the output file that comes out of our system, all of the TIFs are out already. So we won't have to worry with that difference between are they in a TIF or not in a TIF. Will you send us your PowerPoint? I wasn't able to get in right at 1. Carrie, will you send it to him?
yep. I'm going to send it to Katie and she'll provide it.
There you go. I have county ag extension as adopted status. Do I have to contact them to make a change? No, you do not. We're talking
I,
only cities,
yeah,
counties, and schools. Other entity types can fly past and do their budget anytime they want prior to April 30. Okay.
right.
So you'll have a bunch of townships who are already done. Great. Fantastic. We want that. You're going to have EMAs done, E911s done, sanitary sewers. Some of those may be done already. Those are all okay. The only ones who have to stick to this timeline are cities, counties, and schools because they're part of this mailing process. Everyone else gets to play the same way they did last year, only now the deadline for submission is April 30 for everybody who has a tax as part of their budget. Mail vendors are recommending sooner. They will have capacity to handle all of us. Will they have capacity to handle all of us if they wait until 4 p.m. on 15th? They can recommend what they want. The law is what the law is. Law says they can change their data until March 15th. So that's what we have to live with. So you may have to talk to your mail vendor about that fact, but I would not, if I was in your shoes as a county auditor, and Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. If I was in your shoes as a county auditor, I would not want to pull my data before 4 p.m. March 15th because there's just too many chances to change.
Well, to change, or like if you have somebody that hasn't entered their data yet and you pull it
Yep,
early and then you're telling people that they failed their legal requirement and they didn't, that's not a good look.
that's a
So,
problem for you. Yeah.
yeah. Like we all know this is new. This is a short time frame. Like there's challenges. Um, this isn't easy, but it kind of is what it is. And we're all going to do our best, and as the mailing vendors will do as well. So,
Well, and I think the March 5th deadline that we have put out there has caused a bit of confusion for auditors. The only reason that and it's really me in particular because I have to deal with the cities who are going to be the most likely to be stragglers in this situation. I wanted to put a date out there that was much earlier than the actual deadline so that we can get 85% of the cities done in a timely fashion and have time to clean up those stragglers before March 15th. We know we're going to have some stragglers who we always have city stragglers in any process change. So that's the reason I started instituting March 5th, and Carrie and John joined me in that, is to make sure that we get everybody in this first year. Like Carrie said, it's first year. We're going to have problems. We're going to have people who don't understand. I have plenty of cities who are still shocked to learn that the process has changed at all when I talk to them.
mhm.
So we needed to play for that. And that's why we have March 5th versus March 15th as our preferred deadline. Legally, they have till March 15th.
Yeah.
Is there wording on the letter in areas where there is no city entity or it is blank? Okay. So if your tax district is outside of a city, it will just be blank for the city portion. Um, it's just going to be purely blank. Your school and your county piece will still fill in, but it will be nothing for the city. And the person receiving that mailing should understand, oh, I don't live in a city. why would there be city data? Townships
Right.
are not part of this, so we would not want to fill in the township information because they're not legally required to be part of the mailing. So we're just going to leave it blank.
And I think that is one of the notes at the
Yep.
bottom on the, if they flip the page over.
Yep.
But yeah, they should get it. You know, like I shouldn't get city information because I don't live in a city, but they
You,
might not. I mean, yeah.
yeah. Carrie, I'm going to let you handle the next one since you've been dealing with the software companies more.
Once we upload to our county software, how do our vendors know what format to print mailer? Is the software generate PDF file that we send to the vendor? So I mean, you're gonna have to check with your software vendor. What we provided is a PDF. Whether they're providing PDFs for you to get to your mailing vendor, or if it's, a data file that's going from your system to the mailing vendor, that might vary some, based on the mailing vendor or your software company. So I guess that piece of it is, might vary. You'd have to check with them.
And your software vendor will have instruction sets of their
Yeah,
own, I'm sure, coming out shortly. We just at the end of last week or beginning of this week, I forget when, my days are blending together on me this time of year, but we have just recently provided the test files to the software vendors. So they may still be fine tuning their piece of this. And that's why we're not releasing until March 6th, to give everybody time to find all of the kinks and iron those out prior to us releasing this. We'd like to only release it once and not have to do it, 5 different times because we found mistakes. So watch for guidance from your software vendors and be very mindful that you read everything that comes from them, because it's going to be very important. What if a city has already certified their budget? Shoot me an email, because nobody should have, and that's a problem. Because I don't believe that theoretically they could have already, but I need to look at it. The unfortunate part in the law is that, as Carrie mentioned before, we said no hearings before March 25th, just because it's common sense. If I have a mailing going out March 20th that says when my time, date, and place of my hearing are going to be, I'd want the hearing to be after that point so that they'd have a chance to get there, but there's no legal requirement that they wait. So we could have some that technically are done and have certified already. They're going to look bad when all of this comes out, but please shoot me an email and let me know who it is so I can take a look at it and make sure that they're not just messed up and have completely biffed the process, because we don't want anybody losing out. Some of my schools have said they won't be able to submit their notice data until after the legislature makes the decision on state support to schools. That is a reason I've been given that the schools won't be submitting until these March 9th or 10th. And that's somewhat
that's
legitimate.
fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are waiting for allowable growth from the state, as they always are. The legislature has just recently introduced the allowable growth bill just last week at 3%. So now the real work begins. Introduction is the easy part. Now they have to haggle over where it's actually going to end up. And that could take weeks, if not months. But they have till March 15th, so they can take
Yeah.
till March 9th or 10th. That's fine, as long as they're aware of the process and that it needs to be in. That's the important thing.
And I would say too, one of the reasons why there's that little note on the backside of the hearing, the mailer is, it says something about, final rates can change due to action of the legislature, et cetera, because keep in mind schools, their levy is calculated by statute. So it's not unusual for what they propose on their budget to be different at the end of the day. And it's just a function of law. So yeah, and schools might have to, they're proposing earlier than they normally do because that's what's required, and there may be some discomfort on their part because of that, because it's not unusual for the legislature to take quite a while, just like Ted was saying, to decide that allowable growth number.
All right, that clears out our question queue. Any other questions? Oh, just to thank you. Well, you're
Oh,
welcome.
thanks, Denise.
Mostly Carrie.
It's always fun, isn't it? Yeah, and please, guys, let us know as you have questions. We are going to do a webinar next week on Thursday, I believe. And it's going to talk, specifically about certifying budgets and just, some of the issues related to certifying this new piece for folks. So, and that will be Ted and I, and then John will probably participate as well, just to talk a little bit from the school side. So that'll be next week. And then after that webinar, then we'll send out the certification instructions, include everybody's levy limits, because obviously for cities and counties, you guys, for counties, obviously, your levy limit, but just, what the cities that you're certifying, what their levy limits are to make sure nobody's exceeding, those types of things. We'll be going over all that good stuff next week and providing those instructions thereafter.
And also be on the lookout. We will have, and this goes for all levels of local governments, not just the counties, but we're going to have a kind of an explainer document for the mailing. So for citizens who get their mailing, here's what it means. Here's what all the different pieces mean. I'm working on that currently when I can get 2 minutes together to do something that's not just answering email. I'm working on that, and we should have that out here hopefully next week in tandem with that certification webinar.
Yeah, that would be great. And that is the website that's listed on the back of the notice that I pointed out. And so hopefully, like we said, this is a new piece of mail that nobody's ever going to have received before. So if they're paying attention, they might be completely confused. Hopefully they will go first to our website that's listed and get a little explanation on it. But I think it is good too if you're having some public hearings or your own sort of communication that's going out to your citizens, that you kind of give them a heads up that they're going to get this in the mail. So just as a way to kind of get the word out so they're not totally caught off guard and just set it aside.
Okay, one last question that came in, Carrie, can you provide a listing of all schools, cities, and counties who have certified, kind of like you do with counties who have certified their values? I'm assuming, Carla, do you mean by certified, do you mean ones that are in proposed status or have passed the goal line for the mailing? Is that what you're looking for? Because we can do that. Yeah, okay, yeah, we can provide that as of right now. And then probably again around March 5th. And then obviously closer to the 15th, we're watching it too. You're not the only ones. So closer as we pass March 5th, as we pass the March 5th deadline that I've set and that Carrie set and that John has set, we will start following up with those who have nothing in the system or who are behind. We would expect that you guys would reach out as well, but we will also follow up on that, and we will start providing some follow-up lists at that point, just so we know who's trailing behind and who needs to be contacted.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I guess we know who's was not certified by March 15th. We go to test and check our mailings.
Yeah, we understand. Yep, that it's, if you have a list of people who haven't certified yet, it's going to be beneficial. So we will provide those along with follow up. If we're going to see anybody in your county who's going to need follow up, we'll include you on any follow up we do. We'll CC you on any emails that we send, and then we'll also provide a list stating who's there, who needs a little nudge.
Yeah.
All right, it's 2:00, Carrie, so I think we're
Oh,
good.
webinar pages used to have the list of what the first hearing needs to include. Not quite sure if I understand the question, but the first hearing notice, do you mean that? I'm not sure if you're talking about the notice itself, but the notice itself is, just exactly what's listed in the system. So it's populated by current year information and what you propose for your countywide and rural levies. And then pretty much everything else is calculated.
Well, and
Except
when
of
we
course you
talk,
got to enter your reason for increase.
right, and next week when we talk about certification, we'll go over what you should expect to have in your office at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think your question will probably be answered there.
Oh, like the opening separate meeting roll call, approve agenda, public comments, then close. I mean, it's really just a meeting that includes a hearing, and that's it,
Mm.
is essentially. So yeah, I mean,
You'll,
however you do your meetings, just don't have anything else on the agenda other than the
yep.
hearing is essentially what you need to do.
Yeah, the way I've been explaining it to my cities is you'd open your meeting as you normally would. You open your hearing, you close your hearing, you close your meeting as you normally would. You need minutes, you need a separate agenda all by itself, not on the same paper as the other agenda, so that you can see they're two distinct meetings. But yeah, it's like Carrie said, that's the only agenda item. Otherwise, the conduct of your meeting is very similar to a normal meeting.
Yep. And then anything else, certification on the hearing for the proposed tax levy, used to have a resolution. So right, like when we used to do the max levy process, your board had to adopt a resolution setting your max levies. That was very specifically required in statute. What statute requires as far as this hearing now is that you hold a hearing. There is no particular document or action that's taken by the board. So we don't discuss what is on the budget or anything unless questions are asked. I mean, it's a regular hearing. I mean, you can introduce the hearing in the typical way you would introduce a hearing on proposed tax asking.
So okay, you can you can discuss what's in the budget framed in how it affects the tax rate. But the focus of the hearing, this first hearing, the proposed property tax hearing, should be the taxes requested and the tax rates that go along with them.
Right.
So you can go into other parts of the budget based on that conversation. That's okay. What you don't want to walk into is a discussion of other city business that is not budget pertinent. Those are the things that I think you really need to avoid. But yeah, a discussion of taxes will inevitably go to other parts of the budget. There's just no way around it because you have to explain how you got to where you got with taxes.
Thank you both so much.
Yep.
We will see you next week.
Yep. And Katie, this will be posted, the recording will be posted on the web page for ISAC. Is that right?
Yes, it will. Yep.
Okay. Right. All right.
And we will put
Sounds
your
good.
presentation on there.
Yep.
With
I
it.
will email you that as soon as we get off here.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right. Thank you both so much.
Yep. You have a good day. Thanks, everyone.